Yeah, the lessons from Formula One teams, what can we learn from them? And especially on the topic of how to organize for agility and innovation. It's a topic that's on the boardrooms of most of the clients I work with. Everyone is looking for ways to become agile, to innovate faster. And that's mainly because we are living in a world that's now increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. The pace of change is increasing. The lifetime of companies is decreasing. So everyone is looking for answers, for new ways of doing things. And many companies start by, for example, adopting agile practices in IT, which is a great start. But unfortunately, most of the time when I come into a company, I see this. Right? This little red thingy here is our Agile project, and finally we're Agile. I mean, that's great. I mean, we can be proud of that. But as you can see, there's another big, hairy problem out there that needs to be solved as well. And I started looking for answers. If this is not the silver bullet to solve all our challenges, what is? So I started looking for answers. I went on a tour to visit some of the most innovative, digital, fast innovating companies in the world. Was able to be at their offices, interview people, but also witness their culture for a couple of days by being inside the companies. And there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot more to it than just doing Scrum in the IT department. You need to look at culture, need to look at your DNA, look about leadership, how leadership is operating. And luckily, I can now add Formula One to the kinds of organizations I've researched. Because a couple of weeks ago, actually a couple of months ago, I was invited to come over to Milton Keynes, which is in the UK, just north of London, where the Red Bull Racing factory is at, to visit the factory together with some people from AT&T. And this is what I saw. This is actually what I saw, because this was the view from the meeting room where we had some of our discussions. And I don't know about your local garage, but it looks nothing like my local garage. There's no oil, there's no grease. Everything is just very clean and very nice and very, very high tech. And this is the place where they assemble the cars. So yeah, they do work here, actually. So let's talk a little bit about what Formula One is. Are there any regular Formula One viewers in the audience? Yeah, a couple. Any Max Verstappen fans? Yeah, it's great, prodigy. So for everyone else, doesn't matter. We're going to go through what it is. So we're talking about a sport with 10 different teams, 20 different drivers, and they go through 20 different races on 5 continents in 9 months. So it's a crazy circus, as you can see here. And does anyone have an idea where this is? Singapore, yeah, they just packed up and left there. Singapore was last night. It's a night race in the harbor of Singapore. And yeah, I mean, there's this old joke, how many engineers does it take to change a light bulb? But more relevant is, how many people does it take to drive 2 cars? Anyone has an idea of how big a Formula One team is? 400? Really? Who says less than 400? Yeah? But who says more than 400? Right, a couple people here. Well, I'm going to surprise you a little bit, because Red Bull Racing has about 750 employees just to build and race the 2 cars. We have Ferrari, about 850. And the team with most employees is Mercedes, about 1,300 people working on those 2 cars. And Ferrari and Mercedes, they built their own engines, so that's why they have a little bit more people. But it's something, I mean, it's not a small team, it's not a small sport. There's a huge amount of work that goes into trying to race these 2 cars. And let's take a look at why this is, to give you an impression of what it actually takes to build such a car. I have a video clip that shows you the story of one single bullet. How many parts are there in a Formula One car? Anyone want to guess? I try to count them on the slide, but that won't work. Yeah, so there are about 100,000 different components that they can use on the car, and 80% are built in-house. So you can imagine it's a lot of work. They make about 30,000 changes per season. And you could think of the car as a driving prototype. It is never on the circuit in the exact same configuration. It changes every time. Every time the car goes on the track, it's different. And it's kind of similar of how we try to see software in companies. It's continuously evolving, continuously updating, and going further. And with about 1,000 changes per week, they focus a lot on how quickly they can make new parts. Because between some races, most races have two weeks apart, but some of them are only 1 week apart. So you can imagine on Sunday the race is in Singapore. On Monday they look at the data from the race and they draw new parts by hand or in the computer. They have a room full of people drawing components in 3D. Then Monday night they'll run their computer simulations to try to process numbers to see if the parts are performing better. On Tuesday they will print them in 3D and put them in a wind tunnel at a smaller scale, and then they do some real testing with some real wind. On Wednesday they will start the production of the full-size parts in carbon fiber. They do that themselves as well, and that takes about a couple of hours, maybe even a day. And on Wednesday night, they can fly them to the next circuit. And Thursday, they put it on the car. So this speed of iteration is key. There's a lot of work to be done in this very short time frame. And the Formula One teams that are able to churn out new parts that are improved, they will win races. Because imagine what would happen if you would have the fastest car of the track in the first race of the season. And you will win the race, obviously. But then maybe you decide not to innovate anymore. You just stick with that car. What would happen? You're going to lose very quickly because these cars, they become quicker per lap, about 2 seconds. So 2 seconds per lap speed gain during a season. And every team is doing this. It's not just one team doing it. Everyone is doing it. So if you would be stopping to innovate, actually about halfway the season, you'll be in the back of the grid because that's exactly the exact difference between being in front and being in the back. So how the hell did they do this? How do they innovate this fast? Let's take a look. So first and foremost, what would happen after a race? These guys, Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, they're also pretty famous for their jet set lifestyles, right? So maybe they get drunk, they fly back with their private jets and go to a bar and celebrate, and then relax for 2 weeks and then go to the next track. Well, it's nothing like that. Actually, after the race, they spend an enormous amount of time reviewing and learning what happened. Actually, this reviewing process takes longer than the actual race. So this is a picture of last year where you see Lewis Hamilton on the left and Nico Rosberg on the right, reviewing the race with their engineers. Everyone is connected with headphones. People back in the office in the UK are listening in as well. And they go through every single step. How was the balance? How was the braking? How was the strategy? They have a whole huge checklist to look at learning opportunities. And during a racing weekend, there are actually 50 different meetings focused only on learning. So they have a cadence, an operating rhythm with built-in learning events on all the different levels. They understand this very well. So it's something you can think of in your own organizations. How often do we actually sit down, reflect, and learn from things? And they just do it all the time. It's built in their way of working. So this is Christian Horner, the director of Red Bull Racing, back in the factory. What he does, when he can after the races, he'll go back to Milton Keynes and stand in front of the audience, not the audience, his employees, and actually tell them and go through the race with everyone else. I mean, with 750 employees, they can only bring 60 to the circuit. So almost 700 people are back in the UK wondering what happened and trying to learn what they can do next. So he goes through the whole debrief again and sets priorities. And he's building basically a shared consciousness among everyone in the organization, which enables autonomy. Because if everyone knows what is going on and everyone knows what is important for the company, you can actually let go a lot of the command and control stuff and let people make decisions for themselves. And this is not unique for Formula One. I've seen this, for example, also at Google and Spotify. At Google, they call this TGIF. Anyone knows what that stands for? Thank God it's Friday, exactly. So every week on Friday, Google holds this all-hands meeting. And I mean, Google, as you know, Google is a global company, so tens of thousands of people connect through video conferencing. And it's a two-way street. People vote on what questions need to be asked to the leaders. And the leaders are in touch with the employees all the time, setting the context of the system and making sure everyone knows what is important. It's the same at Spotify. It's a very good practice you can use. Let's take a look at failure. This is what failure looks like in Formula One, as you can imagine. This is Mark Webber at the end of the pit straight a couple years ago, with 3 wheels attached and one flying through the air. It's pretty dangerous. These things fly very fast, and if it hits you in the head, you'll break your neck. So this is somebody else running, trying to catch it, right? So this is failure. What failure looks like in Formula One. His race is over, and actually he lost one of the 20 opportunities in the season to score points. So about 5% of his year is gone because of this. So what would happen in your company if one person's mistake would lead to a loss of 5% of the yearly revenue? What would happen to this person? Anybody want to guess? Yeah, he might get fired. But not so much in Formula One. So there's this great quote I like from Paddy Lowe. And he says, every time you have a negative response to an issue, you're denying yourself the opportunity to improve. Yeah, take photos of that one. I love it. And even further, what they do, they try to understand what happened. Right? This is a fishbone diagram. You can use it to do root cause analysis. It's rarely just one person's mistake. There's multiple things in the system that are going on. And they understand this very well. I mean, the effect here clearly was driving away with the wheel not attached. But what happened actually? The person that was operating the wheel gun to attach, to disconnect the old wheel, put the new wheel on, he found out there was a mechanical problem or technical problem with the nut. So he had to reach out and grab a new one. So there was a mechanical challenge there. And then secondly, there was a miscommunication in the team that they thought the car was good to go. So it was a visual cue that was misunderstood, and they decided to let the car go. So yeah, whose fault is this? It's the fault of the system, right? So think about that. It's very easy to just blame one person and fire him, but you will be completely not learning from it and not see the real challenge here. So Rob Smedley from Williams also said, when you have a blame culture, but people spend about 60 to 90% of their time covering up, right? Covering up what they've done, rather than understanding the problem, making the car go quicker. Having a blame culture, everyone covering their asses, sending emails, got to put somebody in the CC just to make sure they know that I've said that, and it's a waste of a lot of time. And it doesn't lead to innovation. And I mean, I love this picture from Henrik Nieberg, where he says, failure avoidance is much more problematic than failure recovery, right? And I do have a 1-year-old daughter, so I'm experimenting with this, how high I can let her climb before I'll ask her to come down. But still, I mean, if you don't make any mistakes, you are not pushing to the limit. And this is very obvious within Formula One. It's less obvious in most of the organizations, but something to think about. Are your people pushing to the limit? And definitely they won't do that if they know they're going to get fired or blamed for making mistakes. It's part of innovating. Let's take a look at data. Like I said, we have only about 60 people that can go to the circuit, and almost all the teams they do a kind of a smart trick to extend their teams on the other side of the planet. This is actually a picture taken also in Milton Keynes of like a kind of a mission control room, and they call it the remote garage. They have about 45 people sitting there during the race or during the practice, during the qualification. Actually, during the weekend, there's a lot of people in there, and they monitor about 100 different sensors on the car. And it's like NASA mission control, right? And during the race, there's about 400 gigs of data being streamed live to the factory. And I mean, even if they're racing in Singapore and Australia, they have data connectivity all across the world, and in real time they can see what's going on with the car. And they have a couple of teams that work in parallel. Because imagine during the first lap, Max Verstappen hits Kimi Räikkönen or whoever. In this case, it was pretty obvious he couldn't continue. But sometimes you have some damage on the car, and you wanna learn or understand, what are we going to do now? I mean, first and foremost, there's a team that will look at the data and decide, is this car still safe to drive? If it's not, we have to immediately stop the car because, I mean, people can still die in Formula 1. It doesn't happen very often, luckily, but it can still happen. We have to be safe. And then secondly, how does this damage on the car influence performance? Are we now actually losing time on the track? Look at the different lap times. And if it's impacting our performance, do we need to go to the pits really quickly? Or should we stay out and drive further? And how does this impact our race strategy? And how will it impact other people's race strategy? There's always computers there running through different scenarios of what the other cars might do. It's like predicting what's going to happen. Try to do that with predictive analytics. And they have about 1 minute to decide what to do. Because every time the driver goes past the pit lane entry, they will have an opportunity to put it either in the pits or not. So in 1 minute, all these teams work in parallel, looking at data and put a suggestion to the pit wall where in the end the race director will make the decision what they're going to do. And I went to San Francisco to visit Google, and they have this office looking over the Bay Bridge. And on their beautiful balcony, they have this big sign that says, "Beware of hippo." And to be honest, it's a total lie. I just photoshopped it in, but because it was a very convenient picture with a wall. It is at Google, but this sign was not there. But what is the case is that in the Google culture, being aware of hippos is something that's very strong. And hippos are, of course, these large, fat, but very quick and very dangerous animals. But at Google, it stands for something else. Anybody here has an idea? Yes. Well, that's hippot, right? So indeed, it's the highest paid person's opinion. So this is like a comic, like, let data drive decisions, not the highest paid person's opinion. So here's the leader or the executive with a big fat paycheck saying, option B it is, even though the data says something else. It's from the book, How Google Works, highly recommended. Management book about how Google functions and what makes them so innovative. Another thing that you probably know Formula 1 for is pit stops. Let's take a look. How did it evolve from 1950 until now?
But Holland comes in for a pit stop. Time to refuel and change tires. Lou Moore himself changes the tires. Only 4 crew members, including the driver, are allowed to work on the car. It's a tense time. Holland stays in his seat, anxious to get away. Let's watch.
Let's watch.
Tires are changed at last. A crewman polishes the windshield as Holland moves away just 67 seconds after he stopped.
Just 67 seconds, yeah. So how is it done these days? Pretty impressive, huh? So to be honest, it's a bit of a false comparison because They could only work with a couple people in the old days, and now they can work with whomever they want. But it's a big difference, 67 seconds compared to about 2 seconds right now. Which of the two is more efficient? So hands up for the person saying the old one is more efficient. Only two? Yeah, some discussion. Yeah. Right. So I say this one is more efficient because, and the other one is more effective, right? I mean, this is trading off efficiency for effectiveness because, you know, when they are racing, about 20 people sit on the bench looking at the screens, watching Formula One. And in the other situation, there are only 2 or 3 people that are doing nothing. So we have to start looking at, are we optimizing for efficiency or for effectiveness? And a lot of these progressive modern days organizations, they optimize for effectiveness. They don't care if somebody plays football table for a while. They don't care if people take a long break or they take more vacation days than the rule says, because it's effective, right? And so how do you get to this performance? Well, practicing is a big part of it. I took this clip a couple weeks ago when I was in Belgium. They even practice. And they do this about 2,000 times per season. And they just roll the car back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And there's even a choreographer that helps the team with all the small movements that need to go on to do this in 2 seconds. It's an amazing performance because they now know these days to be able to win races, you have to have very short pit stops because the other team will be in front of you and it's very hard to overtake, right? This is a picture taken at the factory where they practice as well. They have an electric car there that they have to go back and forth without all the noise and the exhausts. And what I find interesting here is that a full-time tire changer job doesn't exist, right? It's not something you can go on a job board and find a job as a full-time tire changer, because it's just a role they take. It's an additional role they take. And when looking at Formula One teams and a lot of these progressive organizations, you see that these roles are very fluid. I mean, people are defined by skill. These roles are changing all the time. Teams start, teams stop. It's this fluidity that helps them become flexible and responsive. So if you're part of the crew that goes to a race to a track, you might be one of the truck drivers, or you might be one of the persons that is responsible for building up all the equipment before the race, which means actually during the race you have nothing to do. So if you're physically fit and you're up for the job, you can apply to take on this additional role. So some of the people there are actually truck drivers. Imagine that. They're very fit truck drivers. Yeah, and this fluidity is very important to organize for agility innovation. So the real agile organizations, we could also call them responsive organizations, they change the way they work all the time. As opposed to most traditional organizations where change is something to be avoided, where change leads to fear and is very hard to do. It's something you do maybe twice a year or maybe even once a year, and then please keep everything static because that's the most efficient way, right? But when you look at responsive organizations, everyone is working on trying to updating and upgrading the way the organization functions all the time. That's the way to be able to cope with a changing environment. That's how Formula One teams do it, and that's how I see other organizations do it as well. It's very obvious for Formula One teams that they have no time to waste, right? There's no time for slow bureaucracy. There's no time for long processes. I mean, if they need approval for, I don't know, investment in the change in the front wing or something, it has to be a decision that's taken on the spot. They cannot wait for that for 3 weeks for a manager to look in his email and then maybe go push it to the process. And you know how this goes in most of your organizations. And actually, I believe that a lot of the traditional companies also are not able to have time to waste for slow bureaucracy. But they just don't realize it yet. They still have it and they tolerate it. And a lot of these processes have been installed one day for probably a very good reason. But nobody ever evaluated it if it's still effective. So definitely take a look at how your processes are, how the stuff functions, and think, is this a time that's currently wasted that we actually can allow ourselves? And let's talk a little bit about silos. right? I'm looking for help. It's not my P&L. It's not my objectives. I'd like to help, but silos is a challenge. A lot of the traditional organizations they group their people with specialists, functional specialization, get together. But actually, value is created through the silos, right? That's why with Agile methodologies we create multidisciplinary teams, cross-functional teams, but still the silos might still persevere and exist. And in Formula One teams, you also have silos. I mean, at this scale, it's not a small team; it's a large organization. They are grouping their stuff. There's a team that works on the gearbox. There's a team that works on the engine assembly. There's a team that works on the electronics. But in the end, the sum of all parts needs to become this high-performance car. And there's no use in building the best gearbox in the world if the rest of the car doesn't perform at that level, right? I mean, that's something to be aware of. So how do Formula One teams try to fix that? Any ideas? There is a clue in this picture. Right. Yes. Well, they're in the same uniform, that's for sure. Face-to-face communication. They do stand-up meetings twice a day. Every morning, every afternoon, all the team leaders of the different sub-teams come together and discuss what's going on. So are we waiting on it? It's like the scrum of scrums, right? So what is going on in your team? When is this part coming? Okay, I'll make sure my team is ready so we can quickly assemble it when it comes. Are we making progress? Are we on our objectives? They organize as team leaders together and do it twice a day. They default to face-to-face communication. There's not a lot of emailing going on in Formula One teams. They don't have time for that. I mean, you can imagine that. And leaders are the glue. They are the ones enforcing or promoting the right behavior that promotes cross-team collaboration. Leaders are in charge of making sure this happens, because it's very human. It's very natural of human nature to just, yeah, those stupid assholes at the other team. Yeah, they don't get it. People are late, and actually, when some parts are delivered late. Just like in our organizations, you might assume that the other team is failed and now you have to work late because there's stupid others, right? But in Formula One, the assumption is completely different. If somebody else delivers you a part or something important late, you will assume that they worked until the last moment to put some more innovation in there. And you're happy to assemble this part and work late because it will innovate all the maximum performance. I mean, if the car would be ready 3 or 4 days before the circuit, you missed 3 or 4 days of opportunity to innovate. Let's talk about people. Bring in lots of clever people, give them the freedom to do their jobs. Delegate and give your employees the authority to take action. Claire Williams from Williams Racing. I mean, we all know this, right? We hire clever people, we hire the best craftsmen, the best engineers, and still we tell them what to do. I mean, the real job of leadership is to find the right people and get the hell out of their way. And they understand this at Formula One. Hire team players, but train for skills. One other person told me that you can hire somebody for skills, but if somebody is not a team player, it's very hard to change someone in a team player. And this is a team sport, right? So even though maybe you're not the best engineer in the world, we can train you, we can educate you. But if you're not a team player, well, we have a different challenge. Purpose. This is what you see when you enter Red Bull Racing. The first thing you see when you enter the office is this big wall of prizes. And what I think it does is it gives everyone a shared understanding of why we're doing what we're doing. I mean, Formula One teams have a very clear purpose. Win races, win the championships. And that's very easy. And with any sports team, it's you're very lucky because you know what winning looks like, right? It's very obvious. The rules of the game are there. You either win or you lose. It's very clear if we're doing the right thing. Unfortunately, in most of our organizations, it's much less clear. There's much more fuzziness going on, and people don't really know if what they're doing every day is contributing to the higher goal of the organization. So Formula One teams don't have this problem. They have a very common understanding of what success looks like, and they thrive on it. And you'll probably not see this guy because it's Sebastian Vettel. It's a bit of older picture. He doesn't race for Red Bull anymore, but still. And so Formula One has this clear understanding. But what you also see is that other companies, like for example Spotify, have a good link between what I'm doing as an individual in my team towards all the way what is the strategy and what are the company goals for the coming period. There's this published article out there, Spotify Rhythm, which shows this taxonomy, how they do it. And having this clear connection drives motivation. If I know why I'm doing this and why what I'm doing today is helping the company succeed, it will lead to me being ready to perform. But if I don't know why I'm doing it, I can disengage. 4 pictures taken in different organizations. The bottom right one is at Red Bull Racing. What is the similarity between these pictures? No ties. Yep, that's true. It has something to do with clothing. So everyone here is wearing the T-shirts of their employers. And it's not that it's mandatory. It's not that people say you have to wear an Airbnb shirt. When I walked into the Airbnb office, it became immediately clear that a lot of people, not all of them, a lot of people wear the brands of the companies they work with. I mean, they're proud to work there. They're honored to work there. And you see the same at Red Bull Racing. So this is clearly a sign of people being proud to work there and to be engaged, right? There's a lot of camaraderie in these companies. And this is great, not only for the people that work there, but also for the organization, because they are able to attract a lot of talent. If you're a company that everyone is engaged to work with and are honored to work with, one, you don't have to pay the highest price in the market. And second, you can attract talent globally. Right, so that's a good thing to think about. So what would make your employees be very engaged and very happy, right? I think it's all relevant because I believe the way we are working isn't working. Most organizations are built on the industrial paradigm of command and control, plan and predict, and we're all feeling that somehow this doesn't lead to agility and innovation. This is what you encounter most of the times. All right, so try to be innovative ones, but I got stuck in meetings, right? It's very hard to innovate in a traditional organization. And I can think that most of your calendars might look like this, right? A lot of meetings stacked on top of each other, people in meetings all the time. If there's one takeaway from my talk is talking about the work is not doing the work, right? So, and the last one, of course, is email overload. We are flooded with emails. And somehow this system, this organizational operating system is not working. And what you'll see is that the organizations that are from the 21st century, they optimize for adaptivity. They don't care so much about efficiency. They go from a plan and predict mindset to a sense and respond mindset. Sensing what the market needs, sensing what the people needs, and responding to that very, very quickly. Instead of trying to predict something that is inherently not to be predicted. It's all a complete myth to have all this prediction going on. Some of the takeaways from my research at Formula One, other companies as well. Organize around a meaningful purpose for every team. Make information sharing the norm, transparency. Make decisions based on data, not opinions. Organize and distribute authority so people are empowered to act. Organize for learning, experimentation. Keep processes light and rules simple. Keep it very simple. Hire great people, they get out of their way. And optimize for continuous change. Everyone participates in updating the organization all the time. It's not something only leaders do. Everyone can. I mean, wouldn't it be great if everyone just comes up with suggestions on how to improve the organization and it would actually be able to happen really quickly, right? That would be awesome. So if you want to learn more about Formula One, some of the lessons I took from this great book, Performance at the Limit, and on the website of Red Bull Racing, there's more behind-the-scenes footage. If you want to learn more about the future of work, come to my website, sign up for the newsletter, try to publish some articles around it. And I'd like to encourage you with this quote. People who say it cannot be done should not interrupt those who are doing it. Right? So it's not easy to change some of these things, but it's definitely possible. And it takes encouragement, it takes a lot of effort and deliberate action to start changing your organization into something that's better. But it can be done, and don't just get distracted by all the naysayers in there. And if you can't do it, you can always call me or my partners at the Ready to help your organization evolve into a better state. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.